All right, we're here in Corofin, the All-Ireland Club Football Champions, the greatest club team in the land. In fact, not just the greatest, but the most stylish club football team in the land. So we thought we'd come down to Galway on a wet Wednesday night to figure out how they do it. And I'm delighted to be joined in Raftery's pub, right in the centre of Corofin, by three legendary figures in the club. Ray Silke, very much part of that 98 team that won their first club All-Ireland title, and same year, obviously captain Galway to the All-Ireland Inter-County title. Frank Morris, juvenile officer at the moment, coaching officer?
Coaching officer.
But the more people I talked to over the last week, the more I heard the Godfather was the title that was coming back most often. And Paul McGettigan, former player, former coach, and very much part of Corofin's storied history. Frank, I might talk to you first because Corofin have had huge success, 7 in a row, Galway County title sealed in the last few weeks against Tuam Stars, going for a 4th straight Connacht title this weekend, and potentially going for a 3rd straight All-Ireland, looking to become the first club football team to win 3 straight All-Ireland titles. It's unbelievable what they've done, but it's the style of football, I think, that has captured everybody's imagination. It feels like it's a throwback to the way football once was, to the way football should be. It's not all about physicality, it's all about those core skills. Is that something that's come about by accident, or something that you feel has come about very much by design in Corofin?
Well, I think really and truly, you know, people, this idea of the style of play has come through from their last two All-Ireland final performances. And I feel that they've really played their best on those occasions. That the days that they played on, the conditions were good, the pitch was huge, dry ball, that type of thing. It really, really suited their style of play. And also what led to that, I think, as well, is the fact that both Dr. Crokes and Nemo didn't play a sweeper. You know, now, to be fair to Corofin, they don't play a sweeper either. You know, they go all-out attack. And likewise, Dr. Crokes and Nemo Rangers, to their credit, went all-out attack. I think it led to a fantastic spectacle. There wasn't an awful lot between the sides in the sense of possession and all that type of thing, but Corofin were very, very clinical on both occasions, and that's what has led to this style of play, you know. But if you come back into Galway Championship, and if you had seen some of the matches prior to that, it would have been a different story. Like the county final last year was, I forget exactly what the score was, Montbellier-Mylaw. It was 9 points to 8, something like that. So, you know, it depends on the opposition, depends on the conditions. Certainly Croke Park has suited them, and the size of the pitch itself, and the venue, and the conditions on the day really, really suited them.
Ray, for people that don't know Corofin, the place, they know the name Corofin. We're here in the middle of it. It's quite a wide area that it takes over. There's no real central point, I guess. It feels as though many parishes almost rolled into one.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Belclare is where Frank and I are from. That's a half parish. Corofin then is the other half parish. And
so what, 7, 8 kilometres from Tuam?
Yeah.
Just off the N17?
Yeah, I think there may be 6 or 7, maybe 8 national schools in it, so it's geographically a very large location. And how the name of Corofin came about as opposed to Belclare is, Frank would know more about this, but they had a match and Corofin won that match, and that's how the club became known as Corofin.
When was this?
1925.
Yeah, none of us were there though.
We're reliably told 1925.
Yeah, that is the story that both sides...
And were there 2 separate clubs and they decided to merge in 1925?
Well, back in 1925, back in that era, as you can imagine, there wasn't a club. You know, that I know when my own father, I would live close to the border with Carlisstrand, and he actually played with Carlisstrand. And, you know, not every parish had a team. You may have had a team for a particular period of time, and it may have disbanded. So that's the story. That's the way the story goes. They played a game, and whoever won the game, the name, the parish name of the team would be called after that. And apparently Corofin won by a point.
What was Corofin like?
2 points.
2 points.
There was no Hawkeye back then, so a bit dubious.
What was Corofin like when you were a kid coming through?
In what sense? As a club?
As a club, yeah.
As a club? We were, you know, I suppose in my time, I remember the very, very early days. I can go back to when I was very, very young, and my father was involved, very much involved, but also he was very friendly with Paddy Stevens. So, and Paddy Stevens and my father would have gone back as far as 1932, and they would have won probably the first county championship.
Right.
So, you know, as a young fella growing up, I was steeped in football, steeped in the football tradition, as were many families around that time. You grew with it, you know. So it's very much the same as it is now, but we weren't near as successful as we are now, you know. So we had probably a lot of talented players, and I remember in my own time, we won a county title in 1977, and 10 of that team were under 21. Well, under 22. We'd won the under 21 title the year before, and I thought we would go on to, you know, have a lot of success at senior and dominate. We never won another title.
Why?
You know, we just weren't organised. And I think the 80s and the recession of the 80s, you know, adversely affected us. A lot of lads had immigrated, and it was a tough time for everybody in this country, the 80s, and we certainly didn't do well. And I often felt that we underachieved around that time, you know. So, and that brought us into the 90s then, you know, with at that stage just 3 county titles.
Paul, what's your story? That's not a Corofin accent you've gotten yet.
No, well, I suppose like a lot of people, it depends on who you marry, but I married Geraldine Duggan, and Geraldine's mother was Stevens, and her brother was Paddy Stevens. So Paddy captained the 1932 team, and I would have had a great affinity always with Corofin from meeting Geraldine and her family and so on. And then her brother Jimmy Duggan, he played with Corofin in 1977. He was in, I think he was captain of that team, Frank.
He was captain and trainer.
Yeah, so I'd been to all their games that year and supporting them. And the night they won the county title, I came out here to Corofin and I went around the parish. I went to Kennepins and I ended up here. And it was just a wonderful night of bonfires and everything else. It was just an amazing time in Corofin. You know, we do it well when we win. Like, you know, I mean, there's nothing like the homecoming to Corofin when the team does well, and the big ones, the big games, and that type of thing. You know, but so
did you look at it that night in '77 and think I wouldn't mind being a part of that?
No, absolutely. I said I would love to play with Corofin, but the thing is, as you know, you can't play with a club unless you're born in a place, or unless you're working in a place, or unless you're from a place. So when I'm living in Galway, so I applied to join a local club there, and they weren't taking players that year. And Frank very kindly said to me, Paul, you know, we'd love to have you in Corofin if you'd be interested. And I said, Frank, I said, there's nothing I would like better, but I says I have to go through a process of applying in Galway. So when that didn't work out, the county board very kindly gave me permission to play with Corofin, and I came out and I played, and as a man says, I became one of their own. And then subsequently then, when I finished playing, I got involved in coaching with kids and minors and that sort of stuff for a good number of years, and then eventually went up with the seniors then in '98.
And you'd been playing inter-county with Donegal?
Yeah, I've been playing, but I mean, the thing is, the travelling up and down, I was living in Galway, the travelling up and down was, it was very difficult those days, because I mean,
there was no Fido O'Donnell.
Yeah, and at that stage I wasn't driving. There was no Fido O'Donnell, and there was a CIE bus that would take 5 to 6 hours. I don't know as it got any quicker now, but the thing is, at that time it was 5 or 6 hours.
So how'd you get up and down?
Do you know something? A lot of the time we used hitch. And
from Galway City to Donegal?
Yeah, and
That's the way it was done.
Yeah, and I remember one night outside of Bundoran about 12 o'clock at night, and I was playing with Donegal the next day over in, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think it was over in Ballyscreen against Derry. And I called into Brian McInniff, and Brian was the manager at the time, and Brian put me up and brought me to the match the next day and gave me a bite to eat, which was very important as a student, you know, you can imagine. So, and back and then on the road again, you know, and that was the way of it. And the thing is, anything but take the bus. So that couldn't go on forever, and it was virtually impossible to make training. And I was delighted then to be able to play down here with Corofin. And from the first day I walked into the club, I was made so welcome. And I just, you know, as a man says, it's a very special place in my heart, and you know, that's the way of it, like. And then to meet all the guys, and as I say, then to be with the young lads then growing up and passing on the skills and one thing and another. And what I loved about it, there was always, and this goes back to that time, there was a tremendous appreciation of the game and the skills of the game.
Well, that's what I want to get into. Maybe
Yes.
you're best placed, because these two will be modest, local boys. You're the blow-in who could see a little bit from the outside as to what was going on, and you'll probably try and talk it down a bit. that appreciation of the game is the thing I think that still seems to come to the fore. The basic skills of the Corofin players look to be better than most of the basic skills of club players around the country.
Yeah, well,
and it feels like they've been taught something different at a young age.
Well, this book beside me, Frank, was very much involved in that from the early days with young lads. And when I stepped in with the minors, then I was getting kids that had come through from under 12s and under 14s and under 16s, and then they were coming to me at minor level, and they were coming with. You could see Frank's hand in it, and you could see the influence he had. And then, I did what I could, and the thing is, we strung a few minor titles together, and the lads went up the line and onto the senior, and then it was important then to get the right people in at senior level. And it's just total football. And the thing is, the Corofin lads, if you notice, there's no such thing as selfishness or anything like that. They play for one another, and that's inculcated from their kids. This thing of playing for one another. And we've been very lucky. You see, like every other club, you go through cycles, and we've been very lucky, haven't we, Frank?
Absolutely,
with the number of good young players that have come through. We're not always going to have them. But we've had them in certain cycles now. 98 was our first, as you know, our first All Ireland, and the 98 team was completely sort of different than the present team. But in 90,
a lot of the same names.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, if you go back, like Gerard Burke at that stage was 39 years of age. His brother Ollie was 38 years of age. Both of them had won minor titles with Galway in 1976. And
so 22 years later, they were still playing with the club team.
22 years later, they were playing. You had the likes. You had a great forward, Eddie Steed. He's Ronan's dad now. Eddie was full forward, a lovely footballer. Was well capable of playing county football in his day. He had those skill sets. You had the likes of Trevor Burke, a tremendous winger who had played with Galway. He was a left half forward. You had our captain here, and you had Michael McNamara from the Galway team of '98. You had the Lardner brothers, James and John. You had Kevin Killeen and Kevin Newell. You had the Donlan brothers, Michael and Aidan. They were all great footballers in their own right, and we had a good age profile because we had the older lads and then we had the younger lads. But the one thing about it is, that All Ireland in '98, like the football they played that day, in circumstances where we weren't really fancied against Erin's. The football they played that day was tremendous. They were a different team when they got out to Croke Park, and you don't know what's going to happen when you go to Croke Park. You don't know whether a team will freeze or whether they will perform. And Corofin that they performed, really, they gave an exhibition of football, and that in a way has inspired other generations of young lads, and they know now that when they get to Croke Park they can perform.
And that's clearly not a freak either, that being able to deliver on the biggest occasion, because generally All Ireland finals are a bit of a scrap. They're tight. You just want to get over the line. Yes, time and time again Corofin turn up and play their best football, and you'd have to think that goes back to those basic skills that they're so well rehearsed they can execute them under the most intense pressure of playing in an All Ireland final. When you think back to growing up as a kid, what age were you when you came to the club first?
There's a wee bit of luck. My dad was a teacher up in Ballyfin College. It's a top class hotel now that only Dennis O'Brien and the lads could stay in. I think it's 1,500 a night or something in Laois. So
Kanye West.
Pardon?
Kanye West was there.
And the King of Spain stayed there, and Beyonce and those kind of things. So Mum, both Brian, who managed Corofin, and Adrian and I were all born in Portlaoise. So Dad moved back to St. Charles College, and I think it'd be remiss not to mention the contribution that St. Pat's, CBS and St. Charles made as well. So when that '98 team, Derek Riley was a kingpin. He was an amazing footballer. He won a Hogan Cup with Charles in '94 with Pork Joyce, Tommy Joyce, the Meehans. That's well documented, obviously. And the current, it's the linkages, I think. And Frank said a really nice thing yesterday. He said the secret is that there is no secret, and it's the people that make it. Our current juvenile chairman is a guy called Tomas Graney. He was left half back on the '98 team, a super guy. He won a Connacht Championship with St. Pat's. Now Pat's and Charles have amalgamated, but what I remember, I suppose, Nathan, and for any club people that are watching this, is we knocked on the door a good few times before we got in. In 1995, we got beaten by Killarney Crokes. They hammered us in Inchune in the All-Ireland semi-final. They gave us trimming. Pat O'Shea was corner forward. one of our men got sent off. Jerry Burke went in goal for the penalty. It was a bad day at the office.
It was
really
two goals really.
But it just took us apart because we weren't at that level.
Yeah.
And then, that was 1992, and in 1995 it was Lawn Rangers that beat us down in Ennis.
Very narrowly though.
Hateful match though.
Yeah, but just by a point.
No, two. It was 8-6.
2 points, yeah.
So by the time 98 came, there was a sense of maybe a little bit of destiny. And this man has very grand, like Paul's been a bit modest, like it's inconceivable now for a player to play in a minor Ulster or Connacht Championship and the same day play a senior. I think it was a 74, Paul, that happened to. Yeah, but I'm just saying, can you imagine that happening now, like?
So you played for Donegal, minor and senior on the same day?
Yeah, but that
was mad stuff. But going back to, over in that dressing room, Paul said to us in January, so you need people with big vision. Paul said to us in January of 1997, he said, we're going to win the All-Ireland Club, lads. Like, that was the statement he made. We're going to win the All-Ireland Club. And that immediately gets you thinking big and gets you, you know.
And did you think big previous? Because we're right in the proper heartland of Galway football, North Galway, left, right, everywhere you look. There's good rivalries that are there, whether it's Tuam Stars.
You're missing the point. No Connacht club had ever even won the All-Ireland Club title.
So when he starts talking like that, are you going, whatever, if we win Galway and we beat the rivals, that'll do us?
No,
or did you actually have a good group of players who responded?
We've been in 2 All-Ireland semi-finals, and both teams that had beaten us, Killarney Crokes in '92 and Lone Rangers, had both won. So we weren't that far away. We knew that, and there was a lot of people coming through. You know, they had that belief. So, but he was still talking about 15 months' time. Now, one advantage that would be remiss to mention here as well about the club is we're 15 miles from Galway City. You have Boston Scientific, you have Craigana, you have Medtronic. A lot of our people can stay locally now. Whereas a big problem in Galway football and other clubs and other counties is amalgamation of clubs. So some of the advantages we have are geographical advantages.
So while it is a rural club, you're very much within touching distance of the city and all that employment.
Half an hour.
But that's a big advantage.
Where I think Paul was manager and Tony Murphy was the joint manager in 1998 as well. Yeah. But there's linkages everywhere, like it's Eddie Steed, Ronan's playing. Frank's son David has been heavily involved in the last few years. He won a few county medals as well. Won a Sigerson, I think, with NUIG maybe back in the day, and won an under 21. So Dahi is Jerry's son. Ian is Ollie's son. Brian, my brother, who won a county title with Sylvester's and in Dublin in 97 and 98, 96, 97 as captain. His 3 boys are playing. So everywhere you look, it's those linkages. So why have Corofin been so successful? It's the people that have made it happen with hard work. And Frank is, I wasn't fortunate enough to be coached by Frank.
You were.
When?
You were at under 16.
Was I? Yeah, well, I thought that was
just what you just weren't listening, right?
I remember. I'll just tell you this story.
Was it not Martin Fleming?
I picked you up for a game one day, and one evening it was under 16, and maybe it was minor. And Ray was very, very tired. And I said, Ray, why are you so tired? He says, I started reading a book when I went to bed last night, and I didn't stop. And he didn't stop, and you read it all night, and you went straight back into school.
Yeah.
And I remember that story, and I said, "Oh my God."
Was it you that taught him about a solo? Was it?
No, I never taught him about a solo. But I was a little bit involved at the time.
I apologise. Yeah, no, because I remember examples. You know, your memories are made from things. I was back in the Gaeltacht, and I'll keep this very short. And I think it was Martin Fleming that drove back for me. I was in Coláiste and you weren't allowed home. So for an under-16 final, he drove back, collected me, and brought me home again. And one other man I wouldn't like tonight to go by without just, and now we're reminiscing too much. When I was on co-op in Dublin, I went to University of Limerick, I went on co-op. So I was working on Post, and a guy called Martin Goggins. And these are the kind of people that inspire you. Martin Goggins, and we wish him well now, he's living in England at the moment, but he used to collect myself and Danny Ryder at the Harp Bar at 5 o'clock. Drive to Corofin for training. He'd drive you to Corofin for training. We'd train, he'd go home and get a cup of tea, and he'd drive you back to Dublin again.
So he wasn't playing?
He was a selector, like he was just a guy who loved Corofin. Yeah. So when you talk about success comes from hard work
and inspiration. He was an inspirational man, Martin Goggins.
We need to take a very quick break. Lots more though to come. Ray Silke, Paul McGettigan, Frank Morris here at Raftery's Bar, right in the middle of Corofin. All right, welcome back to Raftery's Pub in Corofin, joined by Ray Silke, Paul McGettigan and Frank Morris. And Frank, I'm going to dig deep into this if we're here all bloody night until you explain how you're getting these young footballers to come through with such talent, such skill. Talk to us about the underage setup here. What age are players coming to coaching in Corofin?
Well, now, at this stage, in recent years, we start off, like most clubs at this stage, you have your under-6s, your under-8s, your under-10s, right up along the way.
What sort of numbers are you getting at under-6s?
We would have hopefully 30 at under-6, and that would, 5 and 6 year olds. We would have, say, your under-7s, your under-8s would be 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and you'd have about 15 and 15, that's what would come through in those. And in terms of skills, I suppose we have concentrated a lot on skills. I mean, I'll be honest about it, I'm a great admirer myself of Kerry football and the way Kerry play, and I just admire the way they can kick, and to this day I'd love to know what they do. But well,
you obviously do know what they do.
Well, I just admire their ability to kick.
So have you spoken to a lot of people in Kerry about what they've done and brought back little nuggets of information?
What amazes me is that young lads are so talented. You can do so much in a coaching session. You can show kids how to do it, and it's like school or whatever. You can show them so much, but they need to go home and do the homework. And I feel that the Kerry boys do the homework. But we would encourage our players, and over the years, to do that sort of work at home. Now, it was relatively easy in the sense that when you have a team led by Ray Silke going out in Croke Park in '98, and you're coaching your young lads, you have something to aspire to now. You have something to bring players through, and the ambition is to play with players like that and to achieve the success that they have achieved. And of course, as they say, it's the old adage, success breeds success, and that's really what has helped us. That breakthrough in '98 was really, really awfully important to us, and we were also very fortunate. And I feel myself, you talk about coaching and skills, look at, I've had very good underage teams. I have had teams that were very, very poor. And so I've often believed that the coach is as good as the players you have on the field. Yeah. But we had two very good underage sides. And both of them won All-Ireland Féiles. And one of them was in '94, I think, '95, but that's the Kieran Fitzgerald, Kieran Comer, David Henley, Michael Comer, Gary Delaney. Like, a lot of those guys played in Croke Park in 2015, is it? But they were also coming through. We also had another very good team in the early '90s. I forget exactly. Michael Farraher, Ronan Steed. There was a few other guys there.
Players who've come through for this current crop.
And if I could mention one player.
2009, I think.
2009. So our Cahill was there. Cahill Silke was there, yeah. So look at our senior team, and that year was an amalgamation of those two underage teams. And they even admit that themselves. Like, even the younger lads said, look, isn't this basically the two Féile teams coming together here to win a couple of All-Irelands? So we've had a couple of very good teams, very talented teams. We've also had very lean years in between.
The way you're talking there reminds me of, we were in Vincent's last year up in Dublin with Mickey Whelan, and he was saying, you haven't taught it unless they've learnt it. That this was his philosophy, that players need to leave a training session having actually learned something. You telling them is fine, but actually seeing that they've taken it in and they've learned it is the key to progression. Success breeds success, but it also brings pressure, and suddenly Corofin are a big name. They win an All-Ireland in '98. Is there a pressure around the place for under 14 teams to be winning county titles, under 16 teams to be winning county titles?
We in the club don't apply that pressure, because we have resigned ourselves to the fact that we're not going to win county titles.
Why?
No, in Galway. Like, we haven't won a minor since Liam Silke won.
7 years ago.
We haven't won another 16 title in 13 years. So it's a bit of a myth that we dominate underage football. The clubs that dominate underage football now are Salthill, Knocknacarra, Clare Galway, Mike Cullen, and Moore recently won under 16. They're going to come to the forefront. They are the big population centres. So there's a huge shift in Galway football. The clubs that have been relegated in North Galway in recent years, the stronghold of Galway football, a lot of them have been relegated to intermediate football. There's very few senior clubs left in North Galway, and the shift is to the west and into Clare Galway, Mike Cullen, Moore. So it's a major shift. So we've resigned ourselves to the fact that we're not going to win. We don't have the population to compete with those areas and those catchment areas.
Do you feel you're still producing the same quality of footballer?
So our ambition is we'll teach our skills to the best of our ability to what we have, because you don't have to put out 70 or 80 players on a senior team, all you need is 15. So if you have 15 quality players, and most clubs with reasonable numbers will get 15, but they need to gel together.
But you have more than 15, because I think also sometimes we can look at rural clubs and talk about the struggle for numbers. So Corofin obviously have the best senior team in the country right now. You have a second team playing intermediate, and then you have two junior teams who were both in county finals this year as well. So there's clearly, that's one of the great things, that actually there's a place for the elite around Corofin, but you're clearly doing the right thing, that players are staying playing even if they're not on that senior team, that they're getting that enjoyment somewhere. There is that path.
And that's the other point I'd like to make, is one of the other reasons for success is the retention of players. We've been able to retain players, and as Ray mentioned, because we're so close to the cities and the employment that's available to our players, most of them live locally, and are employed locally, and we've been able to retain the players. Now the junior teams that we have, they range in age from 18 to 39, 38, so they're a typical junior team. There's a right mix of former senior players and very young players, and it's a social thing as much as something else, but it's all part of the club. But if I could correct one little thing, I'm going back now to the 1977.
He's a real teacher here now.
That Maurice Burke was the captain of that team in 77. We mentioned Jimmy Duggan as captain, but Jimmy played a key role there. We all looked up to him at the time because he was on the famous Galway 3 in a row team at that time.
Just one thing, Frank has always mentioned, and to anyone who's watching and listening to this, and I'm involved in coaching, we'll say in schools, and it's not about winning. Anyone who thinks winning, and I never won a underage title. My first title was actually with Sidearn Hurling Club. But Frank has said to me before, there shouldn't be pressure on winning an under 14 and under 16. You'll have time enough for that. And GAA should be something that should be a lifelong love. It should be a love affair with sport. And you want guys playing in their 30s as well. So there's too much pressure on young kids now to be playing 2 or 3 different codes, and coaches saying he's good enough for under 16 even though he's only 13 or 14. Like, Frank has always pushed the philosophy of skill development ahead of underage success. If you get the success, fine, but that shouldn't be the raison d'etre of a good coach. And also, we're very looking in Corofin, a lot of the coaches are egotistical. They're not putting themselves out. And at underage now, James Lardner is coaching, Gary Sice is a teacher in a local national school,
right.
Jason Leonard is a teacher in a local national school. The guys coaching the underage now are guys with 2 and 3 All-Ireland medals or 6 or 7 county medals. But they know the importance of the skill development. Some coaches, and if you're the coach listening to this, that's shouting and screaming on the sideline, what you're doing in effect there is making yourself more important than the child that's playing. And that's in camogie or ladies football. So Frank Morris, as long as I've known him, has always said it's about skill development. And I think that's the kernel of the whole thing.
You must take a lot of pride in that as well, that when you now look at, because you're coaching the coaches essentially at this stage, that I don't know if that's a constant battle to make sure they stay on the line that Ray's talking about, that somebody doesn't come along and suddenly want to be the hero and push on and win under 14 county titles.
Yeah, that is a little bit of a battle and a little bit of a problem, that, and nearly all of our coaches, most of our coaches now are parents. And when they're as parents and their kids are playing, they want to win because they want their kids to win and they want to be going home happy in the car and that. But and there is,
my Johnny,
yeah,
my Nathan,
and I know what goes on in the car. We don't know too much about, but I can imagine, if you win, it's great. If you lose, that's a different story. But trying to get them to buy into this philosophy and that idea of skill development is not that easy, because not everybody thinks along the same line.
So those 15 months from you saying let's go and win an All-Ireland to getting there, was it Joe Brawley's Dungiven beating the semi-final in '98?
It was. Joe, yeah. Just before I go on, I'll just talk to you about that. But there's one thing that I have to say. I suppose when you look at the secret of Corofin, I suppose it's a secret of many good organisations, is the lack of egos. There's no such thing as, if you had an ego around here now, it wouldn't be long ticking.
What about when he just captained Galway in '98, having won a club All-Ireland as well? Was there a danger that Ray was going to lose the run of himself?
Absolutely not. He was a brilliant captain for the club, and Ray always had a knack of bringing a bit of fun into it. So there was no such thing. He'd take the tension out of it. He had a brilliant knack of doing that, which was a great help, so the players went out relaxed. But the thing about it is, in our club, there's nobody. There's no egos, and there's nobody sort of trying to be above their station. There's more Indians than chiefs. Everybody will do whatever has to be done. and there's nobody sort of trying to outshine anybody else. So we're very, very lucky in that respect. There's nobody going off on a solo run.
It's got to be a little bit of politics.
No, there's very little of that. Everybody's in it for the good of the club, there's a wonderful spirit in the club. And I think that goes back, I think a lot of it goes back to James Collins. James was a very modest man. He was chairman in 1998. And you would see James out cutting the grass. He'd be at every single training session. He was in at the meetings and everything else and trying to raise money. You know, we're very lucky to have guys here that'll go out and they'll sell lotto tickets when it's not popular and when it's not easy to do it in a winter's night and everything else, trying to raise money. And we have tremendous club people and people that are involved at all different levels. And whether you're Ray Silke or whether you're some guy just helping out with the water or whatever else, you're given the same respect. So we're so lucky. I couldn't emphasise that enough in this club. But just going back to '98 and in relation to the point that the boys are making, that players stay playing quite long here, we're very lucky in that respect. I mean, if you take the likes of Fitzy now, like Fitzy, how many medals is he? He must have 14 county medals, and he's still playing, like, which is tremendous. But in '98 we had two lads, Jerry Burke and Ollie Burke. And Jerry was 39 and Ollie was 38. And both of them had essentially retired, but they came back and they sort of trained at their own pace. In fact, Jerry ran around the racecourse in Galway, and if you know the racecourse in Galway, if you've ever been at it, there's a big hill in it.
Yeah.
And he go around that and up it twice, and he got himself into great condition. And then he came back in at a stage when I think we're at county semi-final stage. We had to play Killarney.
It was time for him to shake the leg now, to be honest.
Yeah,
He's been around a long time.
In fairness to him, like, and I'd say I don't think he, in all his footballing years, I don't think he trained as hard as he did that year.
Oh,
you know,
so.
when he was 39 years of age. But anyhow, there's a good.
He got man of the match in the final.
He got man of the match in the final. He got 3 points from play from midfield. But there was one funny, Ollie was telling me afterwards, you see, Ger was marking a fella called Johnny Barr at midfield.
Oh, that's nice.
And he was after scoring the second of his 3 points from play. And Ollie was marking this other lad. Ollie was corner back, his Ger's brother was corner back. And Ollie's man took off out the field anyhow as hard as he could go till he got out to Johnny Barr. And he says to Johnny, he says, "Jeez, Johnny," he says, "for God's sake," he says, "will you mark that fella?" He says, "Do you not realise he's 38 years of age?" And your man, Ollie tapped your man in the back. He says, "You're wrong there." He says, "I'm 38, he's 39. You know, and shortly after that, we had the best night in here, I'd say, within a few months of it, because Jerry had his 40th. We celebrated his 40th.
With the trophy for company.
With the trophy for company. And it's his son now, Dohy, that's playing. And Ian is Ollie's son. And so it's carried on, and that's another great thing about it. If you look at the '98 team and you look at the connections between the '98 team and the present team, you know, you have the likes of Tommy Greeny, whose nephew's the Farahers playing. You have the likes of Eddie Steed with his son Ronan. You know, you have the likes of the Burks. You have the Silks, Brian Silke and Ray Silke, and you have, three of them. It's just incredible.
The current manager, Kevin O'Brien, was a sub on that team, and he has been gone on with David and with the management team to be involved in 3 All-Ireland club successes. So, you know, the circle of life, you know, I'm sure you've all seen the movie, you know, The Lion King, like, so it's that constant circle of life that is of sport. And Jerry Burke did it 39, and I thought he was an exception, and you'd say that's 20 years ago, but here's Kieran Fitz. Yeah. But these guys are freaks, like, to a certain degree. To be able to play, Fitzy won an All-Star in 2001. 2001, 18 years ago, and he'll hopefully he'll be full back now on Sunday against Porrick Pierces. Like, that's a phenomenal thing, and that goes back to my point with Frank. You want guys that love sport, and like when I coach, I'm not interested if the child is the best player under 16. I want him to be involved with. I'm involved with my Cullen now, that he's playing at 26, and at 32, and 36, and that he might be the chairman of the club or the lotto ticket or the PRO. But in Corofin, there is kind of a role for everybody, and that's the success that's there. But '98 was huge because it opened the door. But the successes of, and Frank is right, like the Nemo, but there was a few left behind there as well. Remember St. Gall's beat us in extra time in Dublin, but like one other thing that one reason it's a success, and I'm sure if the Porrick Pierce's lads are listening to this, they'll say they're the Corofin lads talking their heads off. The only game that's important in Corofin now is next Sunday. the Connacht Club final. And there's no reason that Port Pierces can't beat them either, because they have a shot to nothing from the point of view of it's their first county title ever. They've been beaten in 8 or 9. They're playing a team that has won 2 All-Ireland Club Champions at home. So those guys, those common lads, and if their manager, Pat Flanagan, who's a seriously experienced manager, if they're listening to this, it's very easy to him say, Frank Morris and Paul McGettigan and Ray Silke were saying what a great club they are. And Pierces could beat you on Sunday. Yeah. That's how fickle it can be.
Well, he very nearly lost to Tuam Stars in the county final.
Got out of jail.
A replay last year and a replay this year. But what Corofin and the guys focus on is the next match. So the only game that's really important in Corofin now isn't Nemo Rangers, isn't Killarney Crokes, isn't anyone else. It's Port Pierces in Tuam Stadium Sunday at 2 o'clock.
You haven't been afraid to have outsiders as well. Stephen Rochford obviously came in for a spell as manager. Was that a big decision at the time to look outside of Corofin?
That was essentially the players' decision.
Right.
And the thing about it is this present group of lads have done all that's been asked of them. Whatever it takes, they will do it. Like it's incredible to think that you know, they've been in the last 2 All-Irelands. The way the club structure runs into the following year, you know, they've had no break.
And you're back straight into it again.
It is a tremendous. It's a tremendous example of sheer commitment and endurance to be where they are, to be still competing in their fourth year now, which virtually non-stop. So you've got to hand it to the management team, like what's involved at the moment to get a team right. They're professional in every sense. The commitment that's required is incredible, because Corofin are up there with most county teams. I think if you were to go around the country, I don't think you get 3 county teams that are doing as much as Corofin. And for those players to be still putting it in, their management team deserves tremendous.
Well, Kevin O'Brien's lost what, 1 game since he took charge? 1 championship game?
Yeah, that would have been against All-Ireland semi-final against Crokes. Yeah. There's 2 people I want to mention here, if it's okay, and it's not, but myself and Paul had a really, really good conversation coming out there, but different, I think, memories are what make, you know, you love those memories. 2 ones from '98. The first one is Trevor Burke, who's teaching in the Bish now, and his own kids hopefully will be playing. He was a magnificent player, Trevor Burke. But we're getting the bus out there, and Trevor arrived to the bus with his duvet and his pillow. And we're saying, what do you like, Burke? And he brought those to the Glen Royal, and we stayed the night before. But when I look at it in hindsight, he was 100% right. You're having your pillow and you're having your duvet.
David Brailsford called it marginal gains.
Yeah, and he should have maybe bought a few more duvets with him. But also for the Paddy Williams, Lord rest him, said a beautiful mass on that Saturday. And I remember walking out of the church. He's deceased subsequently. I remember walking out of that church having a real sense of we're going to do it, a real sense of inner peace, a real sense of destiny that we're going to win that All-Ireland. And also for the Oliver Hughes, who was an icon in Gaelic football in Jarlath. He
won at least 3 or 4 All-Irelands with Jarlath.
Yeah, and he won a Hogan Cup himself as a player. He was parish priest here for years, a man that was revered, and he was football to the core as well. So I'm not getting overly spiritual, but all those things, marginal gains, they all make an effort. And I remember Father Paddy Williams, and he would have been in Jarlath as well, saying that mass and wishing us well. And the same thing would happen in Killearden if it was a county final. And then Father Oliver. And when we played Erin's Isle, Charlie Redmond was suspended. He'd been sent off in the semi-final against Castlehaven very, very harshly. Had Charlie Redmond been playing for Erin's Isle, who knows, he was a top inter-county player. So it's little things,
sliding doors moments.
Beautifully put.
And when you see Corofin, like you see, I mean, you've been here now, and you just go outside. What do you have? You have the church, you have the pub, and you have the football field. So we have our priorities, right?
Just before we wrap up, we are here to talk about the club, but I just want to touch on the county side of it and the relationship between the club and the county, particularly over the last couple of years, where there's been such a contrast in styles. Everyone raves about Corofin, total football, Galway, anti-football seen as times. How's that relationship been over the decades between the club and the county? Particularly, say for you, Ray, was when you were with the county, was everybody very supportive of that?
That's a good question now. I would say yes. At the time there were only 2 people involved. Martin McNamara, who got an All-Star in 1998, one of the best keepers I've ever played with, one of the best players in the country. And I was there as well. Now Brian, my brother, was still at Sylvester's, but he had moved down. But the general vibe within the club was to go on. Once you'd won the county or the All-Ireland club, you went in. And I would hope that's the same now Pádraig Joyce and with Kevin. The difficulty is what Paul has mentioned. The club was so successful, it was very hard because the seasons nearly overlapped. But Ian Burke got an All-Star a few years ago, the Farrers have been there, Fitzy's been there, Gary Sice has been there. In my time, it was very, very supportive. If anything, sometimes the county board's expectations would be a little bit unfair on the club. And a famous story with a county chairman at the time, we were in an All-Ireland semi-final and I said, I can't play on the particular Sunday. And he said, I remember the exact words was, how do you expect to be on the county team if you won't play? And I said, I have an All-Ireland semi-final next Sunday. Now Matt played the same day, we were playing Louth, Matt played in goal, but I didn't want to risk it. So the club loves to see its players playing at the highest level it can. And if that's with Galway, and hopefully Pádraig Joyce will have more Corofin players involved, and that they'll have that success, like young Dylan Wall now is a fantastic player. People like that, Liam Silke has been involved, Bernard Power. So in my time, the club was very, very supportive. But what they expected was reasonableness and fair play. So all I can say is 98, the club was nothing but supportive to myself and Martin Mack.
You see, the thing is, there's a massive divide between county and club anyhow, and this is all over the country. And we have the same problems in Corofin as we have in every other county in Ireland. I mean, look what happened in Donegal, for instance, with the Gidor and Glenties, where they had to replay the following week, and then they had to go out on a Wednesday, and then out the following Sunday and do a kind of club. Like that shows no respect for club football, and that's the same problem in Galway as it is everywhere else. Players don't know when they're playing. The calendar is made up after Galway are beaten. So how do you prepare a team in those circumstances? Clubs are out in the months of October and November playing when they should be out in the best Sundays in the year. You know, so that's a problem that's not just in Galway, it's all over, but certainly I've never noted any resentment insofar as club players going to play with Galway. The club has always been very, very supportive. Now, the word around the county was, because Corofin were been winning All Irelands, well, why aren't there more of them playing? Why won't the Corofin lads commit? But that's not true. Any of those guys, if they're asked to go in and do the business with their county, they'll do it.
I think we're pretty much done.
There's one point I'd just like to make, sorry, and I'd like the last word to go to Frank actually, if possible. There's a perfect example of it, but Kevin Walsh changed things a little bit. Before Kevin came involved, Galway hadn't won a county title for a Connacht title for a good few years. So when the Corofin lads were winning All-Ireland clubs, and they're too well looked after in my book actually. Jeans, tops, looked after, luxury stuff like McGettigan. I used to hitch up and down to Limerick when I was in college, but it's moved on. But Kevin Walsh at least saw success and people saw progress. But when a county's going badly, Nathan, but the club is going really, really well, what's a rational person going to do? Only focus more on the club. And that maybe did happen a little bit. But on the style of football, I think we had very, very good forwards, and the one-hop bounce, we call it, when you've got Burke and Farrher inside and Sice and these guys, especially in the sod in Croke Park and a big pitch, that suits them better than winter. But taking Gugsy, we call him Gugsy here, McGettigan, Paul's point is the All-Ireland final now is going to be in January. But the Sigerson is in January, and then the 20s is knocking around there. So the same player could be getting pulled from Billy to Jack, and it's no surprise really that the CPA, the Club Players Association, have pulled out of the fixtures committee. But that's a whole other programme.
Yeah, every GAA conversation seems to end up talking about fixtures at the very end. We've got to wrap it up. I think you mentioned the Circle of Life earlier on. A funeral party has just arrived into the pub, so I think out of respect we better wrap it all up.
Raftery's, because Raftery's has been synonymous with Corofin from John's dad, Pat Raftery, for years and years supported this club. And when we talk about Corofin, we talk about two focal points mainly, Raftery's and Cannabis in Belclare. And Frank Canavan himself played with Corofin for many, many years and played with Galway for many years. So it's not all about the pub, but
there's been a few good nights here.
There's been a few good nights, and when you don't have a clubhouse, where are you going to go?
But they're great houses, and there's always great hospitality both in Canavan's and here. And the thing is, it was another great thing with the club. We didn't get involved in the Celtic Tiger. We didn't go building big centres or anything else. We just concentrated on the football. And as I say, this is as good a clubhouse as any.
All right, Frank, Ray, Paul, thanks for the warm welcome in Corofin, and best of luck on Sunday.
Thank you very much.